Right. Now that we've got cuts, time to start working our way to the next town here. I'm certainly taking my time getting across Johto, that's for sure. Again, Constrict isn't all that great of a move, and again, when you run into a lot of weaker foes, a weak move like Constrict can still feel like a legitimate attack. Of course, in most other role-player games, I would stick with the standard, resource-free attacks for the, easily won random encounters that we aren't really supposed to pay attention to. But in Pokemon, there are no such attacks. Absolutely every strike you've got has limited ammo and a specific typing. In some ways, that makes it a little interesting, since you have to worry about running out of ammo when you're grinding or just traveling between towns. It makes it a lot tougher to fall asleep behind the wheel, but as much as I respect the whole PP attack charge system, the fact that each Pokemon can only know 4 moves in total is frustrating as hell, as is the fact that you can't revert your Pokemon's moves to whatever they already learned earlier on. And while I fully understand that for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, the games just didn't have the room for all that much in terms of added mechanics, I'm still a little annoyed that it took all the way until the Switch before being able to remember previously learned moves and editing your moveset that way became a thing. It wasn't even a mainline game that did that little quality of life improvement to the formula. It was the Legends Arceus spin-off. And while I'm sure they're gonna take some of the mechanics from the Arceus Legends games and shift them over to the mainline ones in the future, it still feels like one of those obvious improvements they should have thought of quite a few years earlier than that. I don't suppose they can mention just what that protector is, can they? Thanks for warning us about potential tripping hazards there, but seeing as how we don't need to use a move like Flash to be able to see all around us, regardless if it's night or day, I don't think this forest is particularly dark around here. It's gonna be pretty much the same as Viridian Forest back in Kanto, just with more trees for us to cut down on our way through it. I'm pretty sure the Pokemon we're running into around here are barely higher level than when we ran into Viridian back in the first game, but Viridian Forest was just before our first gym. Ilex Forest here is before our third. Fighting against Kakunas and Metapods this far in feels kind of insulting to me. I know I keep saying it, but there's just something odd about the how things progress in the second generation compared to the first in terms of what we see and when. It's just funny how much they got right in the first game, and how much things evolved from there. This game added a number of features that the rest of the franchise kept, some of which I'm not a fan of in any way, like the timer thing. But it really gave me the impression that as the games went on, they'd just keep on adding more and more to the experience. I really miss that sense of curiosity and feeling of constant growth when they were gonna add to the next segment of the series and all that. But then, as I said before, when I was growing up, I stopped playing the mainline games after the third generation. I'm hoping to record and comment on more than that, though. Probably see the point when the series started to outright stagnate firsthand and various other things. And even if it does stagnate, there's just enough to keep drawing me in. It's nice and charming world and all that. Wait. Huh. I damn well know that few, if any, kids in the United States back then would know what a Tochukaso is. I'm pretty surprised that a Japanese word like that made it through localization. I mean, sure, localization did get better as time went on, but this is still pretty close to when the anime would replace rice balls with pizza. I know it's not all that big of a thing, but I was not expecting to see the Japanese word for caterpillar fungus in the Pokedex. Of all the Pokedex entries we've seen so far, that one seemed to be the most scientific as far as I can tell. Not that it really went out of its way to explain what a Tochukaso is. Basically, it's a kind of fungus that grows on a bug and can completely affect the host's behavior. Kind of like cordyceps, really. It's downright terrifying in the insect world. Since it's not harmful to humans in any way, a number of Chinese medicines use it. Supposedly, it helps with fatigue, cancer, and can be used as an aphrodisiac. I can't really say how effective it is at any of those things. I've never tried it, nor read any studies that show how effective it is at what they claim it does. It just felt like an interesting thing to talk about since they mentioned it. And the more interesting things that crop up in a given clip, the better. There's only one Pokemon worth gaining with that move as far as I know, at least in this generation. Heracross, a fighting/bug Pokemon. And good god is it a pain in the ass to find. Depending on what your trainer ID number is, the game will assign very specific trees in the world with a chance to gain Heracross. And even if you get the right tree, you possibly are going to have to keep trying a few times to gain the thing. So, we'll see how things go if I bother trying. I'm not gonna go and say that it's a bad Pokemon by any means. It's a pretty solid middle-of-the-road creature. I just can't help feeling that it's nowhere near good enough to be worth the sheer amount of trouble you have to go through in order to gain it, or at least how much trouble somebody who wouldn't check online would have. Especially since there are a good number of other Pokemon that I can think of that I would prefer to have in the same slot. Anyway, think I'm gonna fall back and heal, or well, replenish our PP points, since it's not like we've taken all that much damage out here. Besides, it's been a while since my last save, and going to the Pokemon Center now seems as good an excuse as any to do so. I know I can save absolutely anywhere, it's not like the game limits us in that regard. But for one thing, if I boot up a game after a long time after leaving it idle for one reason or another, I like having my team be pretty fresh, or at least reasonably so. And for another, I don't want to risk accidentally saving in a place that ends up screwing me later on. It's not incredibly likely in an officially made Pokemon game, but in a fan-made one that can be quite the risk. Some of those fan-made projects can be damn brutal, and for some people, that's part of the fun. But I'd say I'll be busy enough with various other projects without having to worry about doing any of the fan-made Pokemon games anytime soon. Hell, I'm kind of overloaded with projects at the moment, and I really kind of want to finish at least 2 of them before trying to get started on anything fresh at the moment. That should about do it for this short break. Time to get back to working our way through the forest. In fact, I'm checking online right now just where Heracross might be so we can catch one. I haven't fully decided if he would be a full member of the team or just another temporary member, but may as well try to get one since we've caught a few openings on the crew at this point. Besides, a fighting type before we get to the next gym would be a good thing. But I suppose that wouldn't matter as much if said fighting type doesn't learn any fighting moves at around level 15 or 16, which we're gonna be, as we hit the next gym. So apparently the tree I want to go to isn't even in the forest, it's back in the town I just left, and that I can never seem to bother remembering the name of. Considering how many times we've seen the name of that town, it should probably be sticking in my brain a bit better. Definitely more my fault than the game, still. Okay, there's our fighting bug. That didn't take long. Starting off asleep as the fight begins without us even doing anything. I didn't see that one coming. I would have liked to have seen what level this girl is since we're catching her, though. Seems she can take a beating, that's for sure. So long as we don't inflict any critical hits, this should be simple. And now for the Pokeball. Yeah, that was so easy I feel downright guilty about it, especially since it's not like I could have looked online for it, like back when I originally played the game. And regardless of the level she's at, we're probably gonna have to go through even more grinding. Dear God, this is gonna be a very long game since I keep finding reason after reason to grind our levels up, since I'm not especially decisive with our team members at this point. It was either name or China after the WWF pro wrestler who, while not one of the best of all time, was certainly memorable, or I could have gone with Xena for the old TV show Xena Warrior Princess. Well, since we have a new bug type, I'd say it's around time we said goodbye to Lurker. Bit awkward to box her since she's one of our highest scorers on this team, but it wouldn't be the first time I've balked a high-scoring member of a team of mine. Besides, we're definitely gonna need the fighting typing more than the poison typing when we get to the next gym. Not that I have any clue how long it's gonna take for us to actually get to the next town, since we've got grinding to do and it's not like the Pokemon in Ilex Forest seem especially good for grinding against. Or at least not especially amazing grinding considering we want our newest recruit to get to level 15. I've definitely been moving along at a very slow pace here. Possibly slower than in the first generation. Or at least it feels like it's a slower pace. Hell, I think I'll just quickly check where I was in Generation 1 by clip 25. So that was the exact same clip where I beat Misty for the second badge of the first generation. My mistake. So we aren't actually doing things at a slower rate than I was in the first generation. If anything, I'm moving at a better rate, despite the fact that I started Generation 2 with a lot of time in Earl's Academy before we got rolling. I somehow didn't see that coming. But I might just be slow in general with Pokemon. It's not that this one is notably slower than the first. At the very least, I'm apparently making progress faster here than Generation 1, but still, it doesn't feel like as much progress as I've been making in Final Fantasy. But that's probably because even the most basic of Final Fantasies has more of a story going on in the foreground than what we see in the first two Pokemon generations. Or maybe it's just the fact that in Final Fantasy 1, since you aren't gaining new recruits at random points, you're not going to have to stop and get someone up to par with the rest of the team. That certainly helps to make things feel more smooth as you go from location to location and get the major objectives of the game done. Well, at the very least, China has been inflicting more damage per hit than Lurker was against the bugs around here. But then for some reason, Lurker was running into Kakunas, which were resistant to Poison Sting. But China has been running into Metapods, which are most definitely not poison. It's almost like the algorithms for random encounters try to come up with the most spitefully annoying encounters for a given Pokemon when it's on the front lines. Though maybe that's just my mind playing another trick on me. It certainly wouldn't be the first time. Just one more fight and we'll be up to level 11. Then it's 4 more levels and China will be up to par. Great, now I've got to try to think of fresh things to talk about to help fill the time. And we just go through fight after fight for the sheer sake of getting to a higher level. A process that's probably going to continue on even in the next clip, considering the rate of things even just in this first clip working on it. Heracross is apparently based on the Japanese rhinoceros beetle. Part of me wants to be a bit surprised that people complain about cockfights, dogfights, and the fights between a mongoose and a snake, but apparently letting bugs fight against one another in real life is kinda socially acceptable, really. This isn't me saying that letting bugs fight against one another is cruel and unusual. I've been dealing with numerous kinds of bugs, investing every damn home I've ever had. And I've seen more than enough documentaries about bugs to consider them pretty horrifying, even outside of horror movies and video games. Hell, there's a reason that I generally enjoy games where you fight against bugs or bug-inspired monsters. Still, it's one of those things that makes me a little confused. How did Pokemon become such a child-friendly world where people just casually send their pets/partners to fight against one another, when part of the inspiration was that people enjoy watching animals fight against one another to the death? Hell, the animal kingdom in general can be a brutal thing even without humanity getting involved. And that's when the animals aren't capable of breathing fire or suplexing a truck. It would have been so easy for things to become a ruthless battle to the death with the tools that Pokemon have at their disposal. Hell, Shin Megami Tensei went in that direction, and you can recruit quite a few monsters over the course of each game. Monsters that would not hesitate to kill you, because they are most certainly trying to kill you in return unless you somehow manage to convince them to work for you instead. And I very much appreciate that they never did go in that much of a gritty direction here. There are plenty of other franchises out there to scratch that particular itch. It's just funny how both the inspirations they took for various Pokemon being brutal or horrifying, and some of those inspirations leaking into the Pokemon entries, that it's this damn kid-friendly. Seriously, it's just a child going through their coming-of-age journey, going from town to town and seeing if they can become the best of their region. Sure, the later games start throwing in some higher stakes from the various criminal groups of each region. Deities of varying qualities start showing up, but at its core, it's all about the most recent kid you work with getting as many Pokemon as they can and winning the championship, plus whatever post-game there is in a given generation. I do like that core, and it's what's kept the franchise going strong for so long. It's a damn strong core. It's just hard sometimes when my mind wanders and tries to think of various ways they could have made things even better by building on top of it. Sure, a lot of the ideas that I can think of off the top of my head, I end up mentally scrapping since they end up feeling a bit too dark for the Pokemon franchise, but that's on me. What's Game Freak's excuse for not really letting the mainline games put all that much that's meaningful on top of the standard foundation? The spin-offs like Ranger and Legends Arceus do some interesting stuff. The Colosseum games had some nice ideas, but they don't really seem all that inclined to put anything that worked in the spin-offs in the mainline games for some reason. Compare that to Final Fantasy, where every installment tries something new to spice things up. The first game was an absolute trendsetter, the thing that numerous other role-player games used as their foundation. They did it again with Final Fantasy IV, really making an excellent example of the whole Save the World plotline that many others have followed in the footsteps of. Final Fantasy VI is said to be the absolute best-written game of the franchise, period. 7 came out at the right time with all the right notes to make the franchise absolutely massive. 10 was an astounding step forward as they finally added voice acting to the franchise. Granted, nothing has really felt like a major holy shit this awesome sort of game since 10 came out in that franchise, and even on the way to 10 they had some missteps, like with 2 and 8. but one of the things that makes Final Fantasy feel damn amazing to me is that they're willing to change things up quite a bit, so each installment feels distinct from the others. Even a title that was made as an homage to the older titles, 9, is very capable of standing on its own. But for the most part, Pokemon doesn't have all that much, which really makes one installment stand out among the others in any particular category as far as I can tell. Again, as a kid, I stopped at the 3rd generation because I felt like they had done the absolute best they could with the formula as they had it at the time, and I heard nothing of the formula being changed in subsequent generations. And when I saw the absolute mess that was Sword and Shield, where you can't tell if the designers got lazy or were rushed to an obscene degree, it's hard not to have a moment of going, what the hell went wrong here? This is the most profitable franchise, period. They most certainly have the money to experiment. Final Fantasy might have had a number of disappointing titles in its long legacy, but with every one of them, you can tell they tried, and there were some nice aspects thrown into each installment that even detractors cannot deny. And it's annoying to feel a bit miffed when a franchise I love that tries absolutely every title is so much less popular than a franchise that feels like it's been coasting along for decades. Hopefully, as I LP more and more of the Pokemon games, I'll stop feeling annoyed by that and just love Pokemon for what it is, and further praise it for being so unique in its own right. But as anyone familiar with my channel knows, I can be a bit of a negative bastard complaining about things even in games that I absolutely love, and it can be very easy for me to keep on bitching and moaning to fill the time when there's not a lot actually going on at the moment. Just because I'm aware of it, though, and try to avoid getting too negative, doesn't mean that I can always actually pull that off, because I'm fighting myself when there's not really much going on. And with the amount of grinding in the foreseeable future, well, I hope I don't get too annoying to hear from in the next clip.